The morning sky above Keth Prime turned dark with ships. Thelanus stood on the highest tower of the Crystal City and watched through his 4 eyes as black shapes blocked out the sun. Each ship was the size of a mountain, and there were dozens of them. They hung in the air like storm clouds that promised nothing but death. Thelanus had lived for 300 years. He had seen many things in his long life. He had watched his people grow from simple farmers to the greatest artists and traders in the galaxy. But he had never seen anything like this. The Herrick Dominion had come to Keth Prime, and they had come with war. The Vellani were not fighters. They had never needed to be. Their long, thin bodies were made for delicate work. Their forearms could craft the most beautiful jewelry in the galaxy. Their translucent skin showed the colors of their emotions, and right now, those colors were all fear. Blue and purple waves moved across Thelanus's skin as he watched the enemy ships position themselves around his world. Down in the communications center, Quintar worked frantically at his console. The young Vellani's fingers moved across the controls faster than most beings could see. He was sending messages to every friend and ally the Vellani had ever made. "Help us," the messages said. "Please, anyone who can hear this, help us." But Quintar knew the truth that Thelanus would not say out loud. Their allies were too far away. The Xanthari Empire was 3 weeks' travel from here. The Phylixian Republic was even farther. By the time any help arrived, there would be nothing left to save. The first message from the Herrick fleet came an hour after the ships arrived. It was broadcast on every channel in every language. The voice that spoke was harsh and cold, like metal scraping against stone. "People of Keth Prime," the voice said, "I am Fleet Commander Vorak of the Herrick Dominion. Your world is now surrounded. You have no weapons. You have no military. You have no hope of escape." Thelanus closed his eyes and felt his people's fear through the psychic link all Vellani shared. Across the planet, millions of his people were feeling the same terror he felt. Children cried in their parents' arms. Artists put down their tools and wondered if they would ever pick them up again. "You will surrender unconditionally," Vorak continued. "You have 72 standard hours to make your decision. If you do not surrender, we will begin orbital bombardment. Your cities will burn. Your people will die. Those who survive will become slaves in our industrial complexes." The message ended. Silence filled the communication center. Quintar looked at his screens and saw that several smaller ships had broken away from the main fleet. They were moving into positions around the planet. "Bombardment positions, sir," Quintar said quietly. "The scan shows their weapons are already targeting our major cities." Thelanus nodded slowly. He had expected this. The Herrick were efficient in their cruelty. They did not make empty threats. "Continue sending distress signals," Thelanus said. "Send them to everyone. Send them to species we have never met. Send them to the furthest edges of known space. Sir, even if someone receives our signals, they cannot reach us in time. Then we will die as free beings," Thelanus said. "But we will not stop trying until our last breath." For 24 hours, Quintar sent messages into the void. Most went unanswered. A few came back with expressions of sympathy and regret. The Xanthari said they were mobilizing their fleet, but it would take 18 days to reach Keth Prime. The Phylixians offered to remember the Vellani in their songs after they were gone. Then, on the second day, something strange happened. A message came back from a sector of space that the Vellani had never explored. The signal was weak and took several minutes to decode. When Quintar finally understood it, he stared at his screen in confusion. "Message received," the signal said. "Earth fleet responding. Hold position." Quintar had never heard of Earth. He quickly searched the galactic databases but found almost nothing. Earth was listed as a Class 12 death world in the Outer Rim. The few notes in the file mentioned that the planet had recently achieved faster than light travel. There was a warning that the planet was considered extremely dangerous to most forms of life. But that was all. No military records. No fleet strength. No indication that this Earth had the power to help anyone. Still, it was something. Quintar ran to find Thelanus. "Sir," he said, his skin flashing bright yellow with excitement. "We received a response. Someone is coming to help us." Thelanus read the message and frowned. "Earth? I have never heard of this place." "Neither have I, sir." "But they say they are coming. How many ships do they have? How soon can they arrive?" "The message does not say, sir. It only says to hold position." Thelanus was quiet for a long moment. Around them, other Vellani worked to coordinate the evacuation of civilians from the major cities. Everyone knew that when the bombardment began, the cities would be the first targets. Send a reply, Teal'c finally said. Tell them our situation. Tell them they have less than 48 hours. Quintar sent the message immediately. The response came back faster this time, as if the senders were getting closer. Understood. Do not surrender. Repeat, do not surrender. We are coming, that was all. No details about fleet strength or arrival time. Just a simple promise that someone was coming. Word spread quickly through the Villani population. Earth was coming to help them. Nobody knew who or what Earth was, but it was hope. For a people facing extinction, hope was enough. Vorak had also intercepted the messages. The Harik commander studied the information about Earth with growing amusement. A single planet from the outer rim, recently discovered, classified as uninhabitable. The idea that such a primitive world could threaten the Harik dominion was laughable. Sir, his tactical officer said, should we be concerned about this Earth fleet? Vorak's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. A death world sends ships to fight us? Let them come. We will destroy them before they reach the planet. It will be good target practice for the younger warriors. But deep in the databases of the Galactic Council, warning signals began to flash. Earth was indeed a Class 12 death world, but what the files did not mention was what that classification really meant. What it meant to be born on a planet where everything tried to kill you from the moment you drew your first breath. The Harik would learn soon enough. On Keth Prime, the Villani could only wait and hope that the unknown beings from Earth would arrive in time. They did not know what was coming. They did not know that help was already racing toward them at speeds that should have been impossible. They did not know that the galaxy was about to meet its first Deathworlders. The news reached the Galactic Council within hours. Ambassador Korthak of the Zenthari Empire stood before the Great Assembly Hall and announced what everyone already knew. Keth Prime was under siege. The Villani would be extinct within days unless someone helped them. But what caught everyone's attention was not the crisis itself. It was the mention of Earth. Earth? Ambassador Korthak's voice carried confusion and dismissal. What is Earth? I have never heard of this planet in any military context. Murmurs filled the hall. Representatives from 100 different species spoke in dozens of languages, but they all said the same thing. Nobody knew anything about Earth's military capabilities. Dr. Lysandra of the Phylixian Republic stood up slowly. The cat-like being's fur was bristling with concern. As the Council's chief xenobiologist, she had access to files that most representatives never saw. I have studied Earth's classification, she said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried clearly through the hall. Perhaps you should all hear what I found. She activated the holographic display in the center of the hall. A blue and green planet appeared, spinning slowly. It looked peaceful enough. Pretty even. This is Earth, Dr. Lysandra said. Classification Class 12 Death World. The highest danger rating we have. Death World. Ambassador Korthak laughed. Come now, Doctor. How dangerous can one small planet be? Dr. Lysandra's tail twitched. She had been hoping someone would ask that question. Earth's gravity is 3.2 times galactic standard, she began. Most of us would be crushed to death simply by standing on its surface. The laughter in the hall began to fade. Earth's atmosphere contains 21% oxygen. For those of you who do not know, oxygen is one of the most corrosive substances in the universe. It burns through metal. It causes fires that can spread for thousands of miles. Most species would die from oxygen poisoning within hours of breathing Earth's air. The hall was completely quiet now. Earth's weather systems produce storms that can level entire cities. They have rotating wind systems called hurricanes that can be over 1,000 miles wide. They have electrical storms that can strike the ground with enough power to vaporize anything they hit. Dr. Lysandra changed the holographic display. Now it showed Earth's moon. Earth is orbited by a satellite that is 25% the size of the planet itself. This creates tidal forces that move entire oceans twice every day. The gravitational stress this puts on the planet creates earthquakes and volcanic eruptions on a regular basis. She paused to let this information sink in. But the most interesting part is not the planet itself. It is the life that evolved there. The display changed again. Now it showed images that made several representatives gasp in horror. Massive creatures with teeth like swords. Predators that could run faster than most species' vehicles. Ocean dwellers the size of starships. Earth's ecosystem is based entirely on predation, Dr. Lysiandra continued. Every creature on the planet evolved to either hunt or avoid being hunted. The dominant species had to compete with predators that could tear them apart with their bare claws. Ambassador Korthak's skin had turned pale. These humans evolved on this planet? Yes, and not only did they survive, they conquered it. They eliminated or controlled every other apex predator on their world. They built cities in places where the weather tries to kill them every day. They created technology that lets them survive in environments that would kill any other known species. The hall was silent for a long moment. Finally, someone asked the question they were all thinking. How many ships is Earth sending? Dr. Lysandra checked her files. According to the communications we intercepted, they are sending a fleet. No numbers were given. When will they arrive? Unknown. But based on the transmission times, they were already moving when they sent their first message. Meanwhile, in the outer system, the human fleet was indeed moving. 12 ships pushed through space at speeds that should have torn them apart. But human ships were built differently than other species' vessels. They were designed by a people who understood that sometimes you had to break the rules to survive. Captain Lee Taman stood on the bridge of the EDF Incheon and watched the tactical display. His ship was leading the small fleet toward Keth Prime. Behind him, 11 other ships followed in a formation that would have looked chaotic to any other species. But there was a pattern to it, a logic born from thousands of years of pack hunting. Sir, Commander Park So-jin said from her position at the tactical station, we're receiving more intelligence about the Herrick fleet. 36 ships, all heavy cruisers or above. Lee Taman nodded. The numbers were not good. 12 human ships against 36 enemy vessels. In any normal military calculation, it was suicide. But humans did not think like other species. What do we know about Herrick tactics? Lee Taman asked. Standard formation fighting. Commander Park replied. They use overwhelming firepower and expect their enemies to break and run when faced with superior numbers. And when their enemies do not break and run? No data available, sir. Apparently their enemies always break and run. Lee Taman smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. Chief Engineer Kim Dong-ho spoke up from his station. Sir, I've been analyzing the Herrick ship designs. They're built for intimidation and frontal assault. Heavy armor in front, lighter protection on the sides and rear. Weaknesses? They don't seem to expect enemies to survive their initial attack. Once their battle line is formed, they have trouble adapting to changing situations. Pilot Lieutenant Choi Yu-na turned from her controls. Sir, at our current speed, we'll reach the outer system in 18 hours. Lee Taman looked at the display showing Keth Prime. Somewhere down there, an entire species was waiting for salvation. They had no idea what was coming to help them. They probably expected a massive fleet or super weapons, or some kind of miracle technology. Instead, they were getting 12 ships full of humans who had learned to fight on a world that tried to kill them every day. Signal the fleet, Lee Taman said. All ships are to prepare for combat. We go in fast and hard. No warnings, no negotiations. The Herrick want to fight. We'll give them one they'll never forget. Back on Keth Prime, the countdown continued. The Herrick had given the Villani 72 hours to surrender. Now only 24 hours remained. Thielness stood in the council chambers and tried to keep his people's hopes alive. Have we heard anything more from Earth? He asked. Quintar shook his head. Nothing since their last message, sir. But our long-range sensors are detecting movement in the outer system. The Earth fleet? We think so, sir. But we cannot get clear readings at this distance. Thielness nodded. He understood. In 24 hours, either Earth would save them, or the Herrick would begin their bombardment. There was nothing more the Villani could do except wait. But in the depths of space, the human fleet was doing more than just approaching. They were studying their enemy, learning their patterns, preparing for a type of warfare that the galaxy had never seen before. The Herrick thought they were facing another standard military force. They expected their enemies to line up like civilized beings and fight according to established rules. They had no idea they were about to meet predators from a death world, predators who had learned that the only rule that mattered was survival. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Keth Prime system. Immediately, alarms began sounding on every Herrick ship. The enemy had arrived. Vorak studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. 12 ships. Only 12. He had expected at least 50 vessels from a species bold enough to challenge the Herrick dominion. But 12? Sir, his tactical officer said. "The human ships are not following standard approach patterns. They are moving in what appears to be random directions." Vorak looked at the display. The human ships were indeed moving strangely. Instead of forming a battle line like civilized species, they were spreading out across space. Some moved high, some low. Others accelerated toward the Herrick fleet at angles that made no tactical sense. "Are they trying to confuse us?" Vorak asked. "Unknown, sir. Their ship designs are also unusual. Very thick armor, multiple redundant systems, but their weapons appear primitive." Vorak's mandibles clicked in amusement. "Thick armor will not save them from our plasma cannons. Signal the fleet. We will intercept these primitives before they reach the planet. It will be a good warm-up exercise." 36 Herrick ships moved to intercept the human fleet. They formed a perfect battle line as they had been trained to do for generations. Each ship knew its place, each gunner knew his target. It was textbook military tactics. Captain Lee Tae-min watched the Herrick formation with professional interest. "They're lining up just like the intelligence reports said they would." "Rather predictable," Commander Park So-jin observed. "Should we adjust our approach?" "No. Let them think we're confused. When they open fire, execute Pattern 7. Pattern 7 was not something any other species would have recognized as a military maneuver. It was based on the hunting behavior of Earth's pack predators. Confuse the prey, separate the weak, attack from unexpected angles. The Herrick opened fire first. Plasma beams lanced across space, targeting the human ships with deadly accuracy. Any normal fleet would have been crippled by the first volley. But the human ships did not behave normally. Instead of trying to avoid the incoming fire, they turned toward it. Instead of maintaining formation, they scattered in all directions. Instead of returning fire immediately, they accelerated into knife-fighting range. "What are they doing?" Vorak demanded as he watched 3 human ships dive directly through his battle line, taking hits that should have destroyed them. "Sir, their armor is absorbing damage that should be fatal, and they're still accelerating." The EDF Incheon shuddered as plasma beams struck its hull. Captain Lee Tae-min felt the ship vibrate around him. But the armor held. Human ships were built to take punishment. They had to be, coming from a world where the weather could kill you. "Damage report," he called out. "Forward armor down to 60%, Chief Engineer Kim Dong-ho reported. But all systems are still operational." "Good, pilot, bring us around. Target that cruiser on the left flank." Lieutenant Choi Yuna threw the Incheon into a turn that would have crushed any other species under the G-forces. But humans had evolved under heavy gravity. What felt crushing to other beings was just another day to them. The Herrick cruiser never saw the attack coming. The Incheon emerged from behind a cloud of debris and unleashed everything it had. Human weapons might have looked primitive, but they were designed by a species that understood overkill. Kinetic projectiles moving at a significant fraction of light speed punched through the Herrick ship's armor like it was paper. The cruiser broke apart in a chain of explosions. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships appeared where they should not be, struck with devastating force, then vanished back into the chaos before the Herrick could respond. "Sir," the tactical officer shouted, "we've lost 8 ships."
"How is this possible?"
Vorak stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His perfectly organized battle line was falling apart. The human ships moved like nothing he had ever seen. They fought like wild animals with no regard for their own safety. "All ships fall back to defensive positions," he ordered. But the humans did not let them retreat. When a Herrick ship tried to pull back, 2 human vessels would appear on either side of it. When the Herrick tried to reform their line, the humans would punch through the weakest point. The EDF Busan took a direct hit from 3 Herrick ships at once. The massive explosion should have vaporized the human vessel. Instead, it kept fighting. Half its weapons were gone. Its armor was melted in places, but it continued to attack. "Sir," the communications officer on Vorak's flagship reported, "the damaged human ship is not retreating. It appears to be targeting our command vessel." "That's impossible. Their ship is critically damaged." "Nevertheless, sir, they are on an intercept course." Vorak watched in horror as the crippled human ship accelerated toward his flagship. The Busan's engines were clearly damaged, leaving a trail of plasma behind it. But it was still moving, still firing its remaining weapons. "All guns, target that ship," Vorak ordered. Every weapon on the Herrick flagship opened fire on the approaching human vessel. The Busan was hit again and again, pieces of its hull spinning away into space. But it kept coming. At the last moment, Vorak realized what was happening. They're going to ram us. Evasive maneuvers! But it was too late. The Busan struck the Herrick flagship amidships, its remaining momentum carrying both ships into a spinning collision. The explosion lit up the battlefield like a new star. When the light faded, both ships were gone. The remaining Herrick ships found themselves facing 9 human vessels that seemed more dangerous than before, not less. The loss of their comrades had not discouraged the humans. It had made them angry. "Sir," a Herrick captain transmitted to the surviving fleet, "request permission to withdraw. These enemies do not fight like any species we have encountered." The senior surviving commander looked at his tactical display. 28 Herrick ships remained. They still outnumbered the humans 3-1. By any logical standard, they should win this battle. But logic did not account for fighting an enemy that became more dangerous when wounded. Logic did not account for beings who would ram enemy ships rather than let them escape. "All ships retreat to the outer system," the commander ordered. "We will regroup and call for reinforcements." The human ships did not pursue the retreating Herrick fleet. Instead, they formed a protective formation around Keth Prime and began broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Captain Lee Tae-min of the Earth Defense Force," the message said. "Keth Prime is now under the protection of Earth. Any Herrick ships that approach this planet will be destroyed." On the planet's surface, the Villani could hardly believe what they were seeing. The mighty Herrick Dominion, conquerors of dozens of worlds, had been defeated by 12 ships from a planet they had never heard of. Thielna stood in the communication center and watched the tactical display with amazement. "How many ships did we lose?" he asked. 3 human ships were destroyed, Quintar reported. "But sir, the way they fought..." "They rammed enemy vessels when their weapons failed. They continued attacking even when critically damaged. What kind of beings do this?" Thielna wondered aloud. The answer came in a message from Captain Lee Tae-min himself. "We are the children of Earth," the human said. "We come from a world that tried to kill us every day we lived on it. We learned that sometimes the only way to survive is to fight harder than your enemy thought possible." In the ruins of the Herrick fleet, the survivors tried to understand what had happened to them. They had fought pirates and rebels in civilized armies. But they had never fought anything like the humans. The humans did not just fight to win. They fought like their entire species depended on victory. They fought like beings who understood that losing meant extinction. They fought like Deathworlders. Vorak had survived the destruction of his flagship, but his pride had not. The Herrick commander floated in an escape pod among the debris of his once mighty fleet, watching the human ships patrol around Keth Prime like guard dogs protecting their territory. He had called for reinforcements immediately after the battle. Within hours, 3 full Herrick battle groups had arrived in the system. 108 ships now faced the 9 remaining human vessels. The odds were 12-1 in favor of the Herrick, but Vorak had learned something in his first encounter with the humans. Numbers did not tell the whole story. "Sir," his new tactical officer reported from the bridge of his replacement flagship, "the humans are not retreating despite being vastly outnumbered." "Of course they are not," Vorak said bitterly. "They are Deathworlders. They do not think like rational beings." Instead of waiting for the Herrick to attack, the human fleet sent a message that was broadcast across all frequencies. "This is Captain Lee Tae-min of the Earth Defense Force. You have 30 minutes to leave this system. If you do not withdraw, we will consider your presence an act of war against Earth and respond accordingly." The Herrick commanders looked at each other in disbelief. 9 ships were threatening 108 ships. It was beyond arrogance. It was insanity. "Sir," one of the fleet captains asked, "what are your orders?" Vorak studied the tactical display. The human ships had not changed their formation. They simply sat there waiting, as if they actually believed they could win against impossible odds. "We will teach these primitives the price of defying the Herrick Dominion," Vorak said. "All ships advance, but be careful. These humans do not fight like civilized beings." The massive Herrick fleet moved toward Keth Prime in perfect formation. It was an impressive sight. 108 ships of war, each one capable of destroying a city from orbit, advancing in disciplined ranks. But as they approached the planet, something unexpected happened. The human ships did not move to intercept them in space. Instead, they began landing on the planet's surface. "Sir," the tactical officer reported, The human ships are deploying ground forces. Ground forces? They are abandoning their ships to fight on the surface? It appears so, sir. Vorak was confused. In space, the humans had at least had mobility and surprise on their side. On the ground, they would be trapped. They could be bombarded from orbit until nothing remained. But then he received a message from his ground commanders. Herrick forces had been landing on Keth Prime for the past hour, preparing to capture Villani civilians as slaves. Now they were reporting something impossible. Sir, we are under attack by human ground forces. They appeared out of nowhere and struck our forward positions. How many humans? Unknown, sir. They are using tactics we have never encountered. Small groups moving through terrain we thought was impassable. Vorak looked at the planet below. Keth Prime was mostly covered in forests and mountains. The Herrick had established their bases in the flat areas where their heavy equipment could operate effectively. The difficult terrain had been ignored because no military force would try to move through such obstacles. No civilized military force. Anyway, Major Yoon Jae-sung crouched behind a fallen tree and watched the Herrick base through his binoculars. The alien soldiers moved in predictable patterns, following doctrine that had worked on a dozen other worlds. They had established a perimeter, set up their heavy weapons, and assumed they were safe. They had not considered that humans might approach through a swamp that was supposedly too dangerous to cross. Sergeant Nam, he whispered into his communicator, are your people in position? Ready when you are, sir, came the reply from Sergeant Nam Hyojin. The Herrick have no idea we're here. Good. Begin the attack. What followed was unlike anything the Herrick had experienced in their centuries of conquest. The humans did not attack in formation. They did not announce their presence with artillery. They simply appeared from impossible directions and began killing. Sergeant Nam's squad emerged from a cliff face that the Herrick scanners had declared unclimbable. They had rappelled down the vertical rock in darkness, moving silently through terrain that would have killed most species. The Herrick sentries never knew what hit them. Contact! One of the Herrick soldiers managed to scream before a human soldier appeared behind him like a ghost. The warning came too late. The humans were already inside the perimeter, moving through the base like shadows. Where are they coming from? The Herrick base commander demanded as explosions lit up the night around him. Everywhere, sir. They are in the ammunition depot, the vehicle park, the command center. How did they get past our sensors? The answer was simple. The humans had not tried to get past the sensors. They had gone around them, over them, under them. They had moved through areas that the Herrick computer systems had calculated were impossible to traverse. But humans did not care what computers said was impossible. They had learned to survive in places where survival should not be possible. Major Yoon led his team through the Herrick base like wolves hunting in a pack. His soldiers moved with coordination that seemed telepathic, but it was just the result of training on a world where hesitation meant death. Sir, one of his soldiers reported, we've secured the communications array. The Herrick cannot call for reinforcements. Good. What about the vehicle depot? Destroyed, sir. Sergeant Nam's team planted charges on everything that moves. Above them, the Herrick fleet was trying to provide support to their ground forces, but orbital bombardment was useless when the enemy was mixed in with your own troops. Every shot they fired was as likely to hit Herrick soldiers as humans, and the humans seemed to know this. They stayed close to Herrick positions, using the aliens' own bases as cover against orbital strikes. Sir, the fleet tactical officer reported to Vorak, our ground forces are requesting immediate extraction. They say the human attacks are unlike anything they have been trained to counter. How many humans are down there? Estimates vary, sir. Somewhere between 50 and 500. 500 humans are defeating 3,000 Herrick soldiers. The reports are confusing, sir. Our ground commanders say the humans appear to be fighting without regard for their own safety. They attack positions that should be heavily defended. They move through terrain that should be impassable. They continue fighting even when wounded. Vorak closed his eyes. He was beginning to understand what his species had stumbled into. The humans were not just another military force. They were predators from a world that had taught them that survival meant being willing to do anything. Go anywhere, fight anyone. On the planet's surface, Captain Lee Taman coordinated the ground assault from a command post that the Herrick had not even known existed. The humans had dug into a hillside and created a base that was invisible to orbital scans. Sir, Commander Park Sojin reported, Sergeant Nam's team has captured the main Herrick supply depot. Major Yoon is moving on their command center. Casualties? Light, sir. The Herrick do not seem to know how to fight an enemy that refuses to follow standard tactics. Lee Tae-min nodded. It was exactly what he had expected. The Herrick were used to fighting civilized armies that followed rules and used predictable strategies. They had never fought beings who had learned warfare from a planet that tried to kill them every day. As dawn broke over Keith Prime, the Herrick began to retreat. Not just from the planet, but from the entire system. Forak watched from his flagship as his ground forces abandoned their equipment and fled to the transport ships. Sir, his tactical officer asked, what are our orders? Forak looked at the 9 human ships that still patrolled the space around Keth Prime. 9 ships had defeated 108. A few hundred human soldiers had routed 3,000 Herrick warriors. We withdraw, he said quietly. Signal the fleet. We are leaving the system. Sir, the Dominion High Command will not understand. We had overwhelming superiority. The Dominion High Command has never fought Deathworlders, Forak replied. They do not understand what we are dealing with. As the Herrick fleet fled the system, the humans began the work of helping the Villani rebuild. Human engineers worked alongside Villani artisans to repair the damage. Human medics treated wounded civilians with technology that seemed primitive but was surprisingly effective. Thielnas met with Captain Lee Tae-min in the ruins of the Crystal City's main council chamber. Why did you come to help us? The Villani leader asked. You did not know us. We had nothing to offer you. Lee Tae-min was quiet for a moment, looking out at the city where human and Villani workers labored side by side. Where we come from, he said finally. Survival means helping others survive. We learned long ago that the strong protect the weak or everyone dies. But the cost, you lost ships, soldiers? Yes, but that is what we do. That is what it means to be human. Thielnas did not fully understand, but he was beginning to. These humans came from a world that had taught them terrible lessons about survival. But somehow, those lessons had made them into beings who would risk everything to protect strangers. They were Deathworlders, but they were Deathworlders who had chosen to use their strength to save others rather than conquer them, and that made all the difference. 6 months had passed since the Herrick fled from Keth Prime, but the galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. The news had spread to every corner of known space. A dozen ships from an unknown world had defeated one of the most feared military forces in the galaxy. The Galactic Council had called for an emergency session. Representatives from every major species gathered to discuss this new player on the galactic stage. But more importantly, they came to discuss what it meant to have Deathworlders among them. Dr. Lysandra stood before the assembly once again, but this time her report was very different. 6 months ago, I told you about Earth's classification as a Class 12 death world, she began. I told you about the impossible conditions that exist on that planet, but I did not fully understand what those conditions had created. The holographic display showed images from Keth Prime, human engineers working alongside Villani artisans, human medics treating alien wounded, human soldiers teaching Villani civilians how to defend themselves. The humans did not just defeat the Herrick, Dr. Lysandra continued. They did something the galaxy has never seen before. They won a military victory and then used that victory to help, not conquer. Ambassador Korthak shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Surely they want something in return. Territory, resources, trade agreements. That is what we thought, Dr. Lysandra replied. But our investigators have found no evidence of exploitation. The humans are helping the Villani rebuild their world and asking for nothing in return except friendship. Murmurs filled the hall. This was not how galactic politics worked. Species helped each other for advantage, for profit, for strategic gain. Nobody helped for free. I have spent the last 6 months studying human culture and psychology, Dr. Lysandra said. What I found challenges everything we thought we knew about how intelligent species develop. The display changed to show images of Earth. Not the violent storms or dangerous predators, but something else. Humans working together, humans helping each other, humans protecting the weak and injured. Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day, she explained. But instead of making them selfish and cruel, it taught them that survival depends on cooperation. They learned that the group is stronger than the individual. They learned that protecting others protects yourself. But their military capabilities, another representative argued.
They fight like savages. No, Dr. Lysandra said firmly.
They fight like beings who understand that sometimes violence is necessary to protect what matters. But when the fighting is over, they heal instead of harm. On Keth Prime, Captain Lee Taman was preparing for departure. The human fleet had been called to another crisis across the galaxy. Another species needed help that no one else could provide. Thealness came to see him off. The Villani leader's skin showed colors of gratitude and sadness. His people had grown fond of their human protectors. "Must you leave so soon?" Thealness asked. "Keth Prime feels safer with Earth ships in orbit." "You do not need us anymore," Lee Taman replied. "Your people are strong. We have taught you what we can about defending yourselves. The rest is up to you." "But what if the Herrick return?" Lee Taman smiled. "They will not return. Word has spread through their empire about what happened here. They know that attacking Keth Prime means fighting Earth. That is not a fight they want to repeat. It was true." Across Herrick space, commanders had heard the stories. A dozen human ships had destroyed or damaged 2/3 of a major battle fleet. Human ground forces had routed 3,000 Herrick warriors with minimal casualties. But more disturbing were the reports of how the humans fought. They did not follow rules. They did not retreat when logic said they should. They fought like beings who would rather die than accept defeat. The Herrick Dominion had quietly issued orders to avoid systems where Earth ships were present. Chief Engineer Kim Dongho approached Captain Lee Taman with a datapad. "Sir, we have received 3 more distress calls. The Zephyrian colonies are under attack by pirates. The Altarian homeworld is facing a plague that their medicine cannot cure, and there are reports of slave traders operating in the Outer Rim." Lee Taman looked at the list. 3 different crises, all requiring different types of help. Military action, medical assistance, law enforcement. The human fleet would have to split up to handle them all. "Signal the fleet," he ordered. "The Incheon and Sol will handle the pirate situation. The Busan and Daegu will assist with the plague. The remaining ships will deal with the slave traders." "Sir," Commander Park Sojin said, "that leaves each group severely outnumbered for their missions." "When has that ever stopped us?" Lee Taman replied. As the human ships prepared to leave Keth Prime, Pilot Lieutenant Choi Yuna received a personal message from her Villani counterpart in the Planetary Defense Force. "Thank you for teaching us to fly like humans," the message said. "We still cannot match your maneuvers, but we are learning that sometimes the impossible is just another challenge to overcome." Choi Yuna smiled. The Villani were quick learners. They would never be as aggressive as human pilots, but they had learned to think creatively about flying. That would serve them well. Sergeant Nam Hyojin was saying goodbye to a group of Villani civilians she had trained in basic combat techniques. The tall, delicate beings would never be soldiers in the human sense, but they had learned something more important. They had learned that they did not have to be helpless. "Remember," she told them, "the goal is not to win every fight. The goal is to make any fight too expensive for the enemy to continue." Major Yoon Jae-sung reviewed the defense plans that the humans were leaving behind. The Villani had asked for detailed instructions on how to protect their world, but the humans had given them something better. They had taught the Villani to think like survivors. As the human fleet departed Keth Prime, they left behind more than just military advice. They had shown an entire species that strength did not have to mean cruelty. That power could be used to protect instead of conquer. The news of Earth's actions had reached every corner of the galaxy. Species that had never heard of humans were suddenly very interested in meeting them, but more importantly, the galaxy was beginning to understand what it meant to have Deathworlders as protectors instead of conquerors. Dr. Lysandra concluded her report to the Galactic Council with an observation that would be remembered for generations. "We have always assumed that survival of the fittest meant the strongest would dominate the weak," she said, "but humans have shown us a different interpretation. For them, fitness means the ability to ensure that everyone survives. They become strong so that others do not have to." The vote was unanimous. Earth would be offered full membership in the Galactic Council, with all the rights and responsibilities that came with it. But more than that, Earth would be recognized as a protector species. When other worlds faced extinction, they could call on the Deathworlders for help. Captain Lee Tae-min received the news as his ship raced toward the Zephyrian colonies. He read the official communication and then handed it to Commander Park. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think it means we are going to be very busy," she replied. "Good. Idle humans get into trouble." As the human fleet split up to handle the 3 new crises, Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On worlds threatened by pirates, criminals, slavers, and conquerors, the same message was being sent into space. Message received. Earth fleet responding. Hold position. And across the galaxy, species under threat felt something they had not felt in a long time. Hope. Because they had learned that somewhere in the darkness of space, Deathworlders were coming to help them. Beings from a world that had tried to kill them every day, who had learned that survival meant protecting others. They could only wait. But now they knew that help was coming, and when Earth's Deathworlders arrived, the impossible became possible. The weak became strong. The hopeless found hope, because that was what humans did. They turned their strength into protection, their survival skills into salvation for others. They were Deathworlders, but they were Deathworlders who had chosen to save the galaxy instead of conquer it. And that made all the difference.